Well, time is a flat circle, especially in the simulation that we call the modern NFL. 14 years ago, we saw Jim Harbaugh, the 49ers coach at the time, coming over from Stanford, walk up to a quarterback who was a former first round pick, a high first round pick, who didn't have a whole lot of confidence and didn't have much of any NFL success under his belt. And we saw that Jim Harbaugh patted that quarterback very vigorously on the shoulder pads several times. We saw that young quarterback's confidence grow in front of our eyes. That quarterback's name was Alex Smith. The year was 2011. You fast forward 14 years to the present day, the Hall of Fame game tonight. Jim Harbaugh, of course, is the head coach now of the Chargers, but this was the image. Jim Harbaugh, I can't play the whole video because the video would get copyrighted here on YouTube. It belongs to NBC, but we take the screen grab of it. That is Jim Harbaugh vigorously patting Trey Lance on the shoulder pads, and Trey Lance went out and played a nice game. Now, lose me with he was playing against second stringers and third stringers. Anybody who knows anything about football knows that. Trey Lance still has a long way to go to prove himself as a competent quarterback in the NFL. But how can you not be romantic about sports? How can you not be romantic about football when you see this picture and you compare it to Jim Harbaugh and Alex Smith 14 years ago? Trey today, by the way, in case you care, 13 of 20, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, a nice rating, 114.6. He was running the Harbaugh offense. The Harbaugh-Greg Roman offense featured a lot of power rushing spine, right? That's what you base the offense around, but play action boots off of that. But it really set him up for success, and then he showed nice touchdown field. He commanded the system well. So you applaud Trey Lance for that. And I go back to the human aspect of things. This is a guy who entered the NFL with very little playing time at the college level, and it was at the lower college level. It was for North Dakota State in the FCS. He was thrust into a very difficult situation just by virtue of the fact that he was very, very unpolished. The 49ers tried to polish him on the fly, but bad stuff happened. Remember the broken finger in 2021? That was the third preseason game against the Raiders. They were going to run a 2-quarterback system. Kyle Shanahan was with Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. We saw it in that game against the Raiders, and we saw Trey making progress through that 2021 training camp until he broke his finger, and that messed up his throwing motion for a long time. Because of that, we didn't see him hardly at all for the 2021 season. It was all Garoppolo's beyond a certain point because Trey just didn't heal right away from the broken finger. Finally, in 2022, they gave him the reins because they spent all that draft capital on him, and he was already behind the 8 ball because of the fact that 2021 was a throwaway in terms of development with the broken finger, and then he broke his ankle because Kyle Shanahan didn't trust him enough to throw, so he had to run him a lot, and he probably wasn't fast enough to hit the edge, so Shanahan ran him to the inside, and we all know what happened against the Seahawks in week 2. So it was bad luck after bad luck, compounding bad luck for Trey Lance. And it was about to be bad luck that compounded 3 times for Trey Lance when Brock Purdy came in and lit the world on fire in 2022. So the 49ers traded Lance to the Cowboys because Purdy was obviously the more prepared and better quarterback. The Cowboys didn't have any time for Trey Lance because Dak Prescott was already established there. And the entire saga, which I'm sure was immensely frustrating for Trey Lance, by all accounts, and my own account included, because I dealt with him, a great guy. It must have been an insanely frustrating few years with the way that things broke for him. The journey led to this, to Jim Harbaugh. I know that Alex Smith, when he worked with Harbaugh in 2011, he had only been with the 49ers from 2006 to 2011. So with Alex Smith, it was a very different kind of journey. He wasn't a journeyman quarterback by the time that he ran into Jim Harbaugh. But confidence is confidence, and finding somebody who can raise that confidence is going to be special no matter what the situation is. Now, again, I will emphasize that Lance is not the starter. That's where it differs from the Alex Smith story in 2011. They've got Justin Herbert in San Diego. I say that intentionally because I don't want to say in Los Angeles. I like the San Diego Chargers a lot better. But this is step one for Trey Lance, and it's an isolated feel-good story on a Thursday night. How could you not be happy for him putting together a performance like this after the past few years, which have been very, very difficult for him? And this is obviously something that is very tied to the 49ers in a number of ways. Trey Lance being the pick that they seemingly mortgaged the future for back in 2021. They were redeemed by lucking into Brock Purdy at number 262. And then Jim Harbaugh, that's from a 49ers era before this one. Harbaugh going to Michigan and going back to the NFL. And now the time is indeed a flat circle. We could talk about Harbaugh, the quarterback whisperer, because it didn't only happen with Alex Smith. It didn't only happen tonight with Trey Lance. You can go all the way back to the University of San Diego days for Jim Harbaugh, his first head coaching job. So this is before Stanford. This is like 2005, 2004, 2005, University of San Diego. The Toreros, right? Yeah, the University of San Diego. The University of San Diego Toreros. I am correct. UCSD, they don't have a football team. They're the Tritons, and in San Diego State, they are the Aztecs. But when Harbaugh was the coach of the University of San Diego Toreros, he developed a quarterback named Josh Johnson, who I believe has set an NFL record for the amount of teams that he has played for. I believe that Josh Johnson has literally played for half the league, like 15 or 16 teams. So he's had quite the nice NFL career coming out of San Diego. That was the initial Jim Harbaugh product when Jim was the coach over there. Then Jim Harbaugh went to Stanford, where we know that he produced Andrew Luck. That's obviously a massive feather in Jim Harbaugh's cap. But on top of that, Jim Harbaugh was also the coach when a no-named sophomore quarterback, people literally did not know who this was in 2007, named Tavita Pritchard, stepped in for Harbaugh and led Stanford to a win over USC, who at the time was a top 2 team. Stanford, they were 41-point underdogs, and Tavita Pritchard was playing like Steve Young for Jim Harbaugh on the final drive, and Stanford beat USC. That was under Harbaugh's tutelage. Then came Alex Smith. Harbaugh also saw the best years of Colin Kaepernick in 2012 and 2013. Ironically, when he went back to college at Michigan, the one thing that he couldn't find for a long time was the quarterback. Like, they had a great defense at Michigan. They played good special teams. They had a good offensive line. They had a good run game, but they didn't quite have the quarterback to bind everything together until Harbaugh unearthed and developed J.J. McCarthy, and they won the national championship in his final year at Michigan. And that led us to the Chargers. We'll see the work that Harbaugh continues to do with Justin Herbert, but now he's got another project on his hands in Trey Lance. So at every single stop, Jim Harbaugh has had significant quarterback success. It might have taken a good 7 or 8 years at Michigan, but he got it there with McCarthy. He definitely got it much quicker at Stanford with Luck, and at that very opportune time with Tavita Pritchard, and it happened with Josh Johnson in San Diego, and now we get to see what happens the rest of the way here in LA. It's funny, Jim Harbaugh started as a coach in San Diego, but not for the Chargers, although they still were the San Diego Chargers at the time, University of San Diego, and now he's with the Chargers, and I like to call them the San Diego Chargers, but they are the LA Chargers. So Trey Lance did look good tonight. Just from a technical standpoint, I really appreciate seeing that Harbaugh Roman offense because it brings back memories of the past. I covered Harbaugh at Stanford. So that's the offense that Luck ran. Roman was the offensive coordinator there, and anything based on the power run, it's going to give you just the very proper callback to old school football. Feels kind of cool to see it, right? And I really appreciated it as I watched it today. I appreciated Lance's accuracy, and we'll see what he can do over the course of the rest of the preseason. And then who knows when your number is called in the regular season. Justin Herbert has dealt with injury issues in the past, so you've got to be ready at that QB2 spot. Lance, certainly, he signed a contract that it's a QB2 contract. It's not all too dissimilar from the Mac Jones QB2 contract for the 49ers. Speaking of the 49ers, how about some 49ers intel? This right now is up in the description, so you can go check it out. It is a look at why Ji'Ayir Brown is working with quarterbacks to reestablish his role on defense. So I think that this fits hand in hand with the quarterback whisperer comments, Jim Harbaugh developing all those guys over the years. Ji'Ayir Brown was the 49ers safety who basically lost his starting job at the end of last season. It was a tough year in 2024. You could say that he was a Steve Wilks guy. Wilks pounded the table for the 49ers to draft Ji'Ayir Brown in 23. Wilks got fired. Sorensen was the new defensive coordinator. I don't think that anybody was very happy with how the defense was run last year. Ji'Ayir was also dealing with a couple injuries in 2024. So he slid out of favor in 2024. 49ers have rebuilt so much of the safety room over this offseason. And even though he's taking first-team reps right now, I think Ji'Ayir Brown's going to be in a dogfight for his job moving forward because Malik Mustafa is going to come back. Marquise Siegel, who is a hand-picked Saleh guy with better athleticism than Ji'Ayir, with the fastest safety in this draft class. He's going to develop. So with this dogfight coming up, it's a good time to check in on where Ji'Ayir Brown is at mentally, where he's at physically. Is he healthy? And what he's been doing to prepare for the challenge ahead. And the fascinating thing that we learned today is that Ji'Ayir Brown, over the course of OTAs, because he was still recovering from ankle surgery, the ankle was bothering him last year, actually went into offensive meeting rooms this spring. He would literally sit in the back of the QB meeting room with Brock Purdy talking in there and Kyle Shanahan talking in there, and he just wanted to absorb knowledge. Ji'Ayir Brown wanted to get a better idea of how offenses attack safeties, because this is a guy who's not a 4-3 safety. He ran a 4.66 at Penn State. But Ji'Ayir Brown also had 10 interceptions over his final 2 college seasons, which was the most in college football out of any draft-eligible player in 2023. So obviously, he wasn't the fastest player on his college field, but he was very smart and very intuitive, and he was able to put himself into position to be that ball hawk that grabbed those 10 interceptions, and he carried some of that over into 2023. He intercepted Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. I mean, Ji'Ayir Brown's start in 2023 as a rookie for the 49ers was extremely promising. But then once things fell off in that injury-fueled 2024 campaign, it was really clear, especially with some of these really traits-based safeties coming in between Jason Pinnock and Marquise Siegel, 2 new faces with 4.3 40s, it became very, very clear to the 49ers and to Ji'Ayir Brown that he would have to step his game up, that he had to find a way to survive in this new ecosystem where Robert Saleh was going to be swimming in much more athleticism than the 49ers had in prior years at safety. So the way that Ji'Ayir Brown responded was by taking his offseason film study extremely seriously. He leaned into his strengths. His strength is the cerebral part of the game, is the anticipatory part of the game. Knowing what might be coming based on formation, playing the chess match against opposing quarterbacks. So by sitting in the quarterback room, Ji'Ayir Brown he had a great quote. He said, "I'd listen to Kyle speak and I'd listen to Brock's rebuttal. I did a lot of listening. So I listened to how they were trying to manipulate cover 3 or cover 4. I just paid attention to what they saw from the defense and how they knew exactly where they were throwing to based on defensive scheme and play call." So, I can't think of a better masterclass for a safety. You've been drilled your whole life on the nuances and the fundamentals from the safety's vantage point. especially once you reach the NFL. But think about flipping it around, and you've got two amazing resources in your own building, and Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy, a coach who's a genius when it comes to calling the plays and somebody who processes them at a very, very high level. And Brock Purdy, listen to those two guys chopping it up, going back and forth as to how to attack a defense. That can only make Ji'Ayir Brown play safety more effectively, because now he knows what offenses who have emulated Shanahan and the 49ers will be trying to throw at him. Now, I talk a lot in this article about Ji'Ayir's injury. He actually suffered some nerve pain, he said, like the shoulder. He hit Travis Kelce hard in the fourth quarter of Super Bowl 58. And the nerve pain from that hit in Ji'Ayir Brown's shoulder actually carried over several months, maybe even into the 2024 season. He then had an ankle injury that definitely hurt him in 2024 while he was playing on a new look defense with Sorensen as the defensive coordinator instead of Steve Wilks. So that was all bad for Ji'Ayir Brown. But he finally got that ankle injury cleaned up this offseason, which is why he missed OTAs. So he's in a much better spot health-wise now. The shoulder injuries behind him, the ankle injuries behind him. He already has an interception in camp. I think that he's paired well with Jason Pinnock. We've heard what Pinnock has said so far about the bond that he has with Ji'Ayir Brown. And now we wait to see what happens when Malik Mustafa returns, probably going to be sometime the first half of the season, because you've got to think that a starting job belongs to Malik Mustafa, given how good he was last year. And we'll wait to see how quickly Marquise Siegel develops. And all the while, we'll see, does anybody get hurt? And if nobody gets hurt, there's going to be quite a logjam at the 49ers safety position, to the point where it's funny because we're just talking about how well Ji'Ayir Brown has taken advantage of his time this offseason, but I don't think it'd be shocking if there were a trade here. The 49ers feel that Mustafa's coming along and Marquise Siegel is ready to play early on, just like Mustafa was ready to play early on last year. Could the odd man out be Ji'Ayir Brown? Would there be enough value for the 49ers to make that type of move? Either way, the more good tape Ji'Ayir Brown puts out there over the course of this camp, the better shot he has of becoming a contributor for the 49ers at the starting level, even when other players are ready to go, such as Mustafa and Marquise Siegel. The article is up in the description. Go ahead and take this link. I'm going to put it in the chat section right now for you, but you could also go to the description, sign up for the San Francisco Standard. It is very, very much worth it. There you go. Should be at the bottom of the screen. Yes, that is it. We've got a deep article on Ji'Ayir Brown learning the system from the quarterback's room. I think he also sat in on the wide receivers room. So cool stuff. I would expect more DBs, if they can, to start doing stuff like this, because there's a lot to learn by looking at the way that your opponent wants to attack. You could only go through your own techniques so many times. And I think that it's right on brand for Ji'Ayir Brown, who's somebody that has developed a reputation as a very, very cerebral player. All right, we've got a lot to talk about today in 49ers Intel. We can talk about Lance, Harbaugh. We could talk about the roster moves. Speaking of quarterbacks, Carter Bradley, Gus Bradley's son, is now on the 49ers. He impressed them so much in the tryout on Wednesday that also netted Amir Abdullah and Andy Isabella and Marquez Callaway. I mean, there's a lot of signees from one tryout. Three signees at the skill positions, one at quarterback. So 4 signees from one tryout. Ben Barch came back today to protect quarterbacks, was slid right into his starting left guard spot. So I think that's your starting offensive line for the season. Williams, Trent at left tackle, Ben Barch at left guard, Jake Brendel at center, Dominic Pooney at right guard, and Colton McKivitz at right tackle. Brock Purdy hit Demarcus Robinson with a perfect deep pass today, working behind that offensive line, which I think is, again, going to be the day one 49ers offensive line, provided that everybody stays healthy. I think that's the big key for Ben Barch. We saw some big hits at practice today. We saw some nice blitzing action from Robert Saleh. Chaz Surratt had one of the big hits and some of the nice blitzing action. I think Saleh is going to bring some creativity to the table that we may not have seen in the past as he evolves as a defensive coordinator. I said Surratt had a big thud up today at practice. I will say that D. Winters also did. I think it was a good competitive session, especially given the fact that it was one of the easier sessions of the week coming out of the bye or the one day off. Tomorrow is going to be the marathon session. So tomorrow we got to buckle up and be ready for some big time football out there on the practice field. If they went well over an hour today, they might go an hour and a half or so tomorrow. That could be a 100-minute session tomorrow. I would not be surprised. They do blocks of 3 in the middle. Practice of the block of 3 is usually the longest one. That is how the sports performance staff has devised the whole thing for the 49ers. All right. I want some good questions. Why don't we go to them? Good questions, good super chats, whatever you want. Let's do that right now. And if you want to talk about Lance, I'm happy to. If you want to go elsewhere, I'm happy to steer the conversation in that direction as well. Any word of Jake Moody has inspired renewed confidence in tight spot kicking situations? He can't do that until he's actually in a tight spot kicking situation. Hopefully the 49ers will be able to simulate something like that in preseason games. Now they are running Moody and Greg Joseph out there, and they're kicking back to back, and it obviously is a competition. Nick Bosa said he's paying attention, so there's some sort of pressure in that, and both of them have been about the same as far as conversion rate on these field goals. It's hard to tell what are makes and what are misses because the refs lately haven't been signaling good or bad, and we're standing like right to the side of the kicker, so we're looking at it horizontally, so you can't see if the ball was inside or outside the goalpost. I think both kickers made all 4 of their kicks today, which would put this competition at about a dead heat. And we've said throughout that this probably won't be decided until the preseason games because you've got to get these guys into a situation that's at least as close to as possible to the pressure output that an actual regular season game will bring to the table. Do I think the 49ers should trade for Terry McLaurin? I don't think it's possible for the 49ers to trade for Terry McLaurin. He wants a new contract, right? They just gave Brandon Ayuk a new contract that they're locked into due to the injury guarantee triggering. So McLaurin would be your X, but you'd be paying 2 X's. It would have to be a lot of money. Like, I don't know what planet Terry McLaurin wouldn't want money on after being traded, since it seems to be the impetus of everything happening here. This is also a slightly older receiver. This is not a guy that was as young as Ayuk last year when he signed his extension. I just don't think this is realistic. The 49ers have been scrounging for the salary cap space they need to pay Brock Purdy and others moving forward, and paying a second X receiver in 2 years and paying draft capital for him as well. That's what it would take to get him from the Commanders. Just doesn't seem like it would make a whole lot of sense for San Francisco. So no, I don't think they should trade for him. I don't even think that it is possible. Who do I think will make up Salah's NASCAR package this year? By the end of the year, obviously Bosa, obviously Bryce Huff. I think Michael Williams rushing on the inside is going to be something to watch. And then who's that 4th guy going to be? Are they going to go 4 defensive ends straight up? Are they going to have Yetur Gross-Matos? I think Yetur Gross-Matos won the NFC defensive player of the week last year. This guy, I mean, and it was in the role that I'm talking about. He was playing outside on base downs, and he would go kick inside for the pass rushing situation. So he's got some pedigree and some talent to be able to do it. We haven't seen him out on the practice field yet because of the knee issues. So you got to hope that he gets healthy. But I think that if you're running 4 defensive ends across the formation in a NASCAR package, those are probably your 4, assuming that everybody is up to health by the time the regular season starts. Danny says Trey Lance will never start as a first stringer. If he does, you're in trouble. Maybe right now you are, but again, fans often seem to ignore the fact that development is possible in the NFL. It takes time. And if Trey Lance is able to get enough snaps, and this is the hard part for him, how can he get enough snaps? But if he's able to get enough actual game reps in the right system, we saw Harbaugh run the power run, play action boot system for him today. If he's able to blossom for long enough behind the scenes in such a system, and sometimes the blossoming actually has to happen out in public. It has to happen in real games. It can't just be something that's going on practice. With enough time, he might become a solid quarterback. So, Danny says he's never going to become a first stringer. I'd never say never in the NFL. I think even the 49ers believed in Trey Lance's developmental runway. Like, eventually he's going to be able to take off, but they never found an apt time to develop him, to give him the time required to develop him. They were trying to thread a needle, right? They wanted to continue with their veteran Jimmy Garoppolo in 2021 while they worked Trey Lance in. They were going to run the 2-quarterback system to do that. And then Trey broke his finger. 2022, they were just going to throw him to the wolves, and he broke his ankle. So by the time that Lance was healthy and ready to go again, Brock Purdy had seized complete control of QB1 in San Francisco. So Lance never got the reps that he needed because he was so raw coming from college to make a legitimate run at being a first-string quarterback. So you say it's impossible. I say he just, because of circumstances with the 49ers that were essentially out of everybody's control, he just never had that opportunity. Maybe he doesn't get that opportunity with the Chargers either. Opportunities in this league don't grow from trees. So it's just too bad, so sad so far in Trey Lance's career. But if you were looking for a feel-good moment in this whole saga, I think that you could argue that you got one when the Chargers threw Trey Lance out there today to open the preseason at the Hall of Fame game. So you say it reminds you of Colin Kaepernick, but I think Trey Lance, because he played in a pro-style system at North Dakota State versus the pistol, which Kaepernick played in at Nevada, I think Trey's actually much more polished in pro-style concepts, like the boot fakes, the footwork of the play action. I think the throwing motion actually looks more polished. He works with Jeff Christensen. Got to give him credit, his QB coach. I think that Kaepernick was electrically fast, much faster than Trey Lance. Probably had a stronger arm than Trey Lance as far as ability to just wind up and throw ropes. But when it came to mechanics, when it came to footwork, when it came to, what you want to see in that pro-style offense, I actually think that Trey Lance is significantly more polished than Colin Kaepernick was. Why didn't Trey have success in Dallas? Well, he didn't have Jim Harbaugh there, and he also was behind Dak Prescott, the highest paid quarterback in the league. So he's gone from behind Brock Purdy. I know that Purdy's better than Prescott, but Prescott's paid more, and Prescott is the entrenched guy, just like Purdy is now in San Francisco, but he's the entrenched guy in Dallas. It's not somebody that Trey Lance was going to usurp after heading over to the Cowboys. So, I mean, the Cowboys wanted to see if they could run some development with Trey Lance off on the side, and they got a game in last year, right? Didn't he start week 18? But that was about it for Trey. And now with the Chargers, I mean, this is just one game. This is the Hall of Fame game against second and third stringers. It's a promising start for sure in the whole shoulder pad tapping era from Jim Harbaugh. And that's all great, but I think that the Chargers are going to have to find a spot for Trey Lance to play if he's going to truly take the next step. And, my thing with Trey Lance is that, and I said this over the offseason, and I think it's still a concern. If he truly wants to develop into an NFL passer, he probably needs to find a place where he can get game reps, like a lot of them, not just 1 week's worth or 3 weeks worth of the preseason. I'm talking like a lot of game reps. And that's probably not going to happen on any actual NFL team unless he really, really keeps showing out. But in that case, The Chargers are going to want to make sure they keep him under lock and key in their facility. And then it's only going to happen if somebody like Justin Herbert gets hurt. So the recommendation I had in spring, or the thought that I had, was, what if Trey Lance goes and plays in Canada? It's a good way for him to get reps, good way to polish the skill set that he obviously has to some level, right? Why not the CFL for Trey Lance? And it still could be a fair question now, despite the fact that he looked good in the first Hall of Fame game. I'm wondering how much more playing time he does get. I'm sure they'll squeeze him into games 2 and 3, but the preseason is now shortened. And then once the lights turn on in the regular season, what's it going to be? Is it going to be Justin Herbert the whole way? No questions asked, probably, unless Herbert gets hurt for the Chargers. So Lance, again, will be stuck in the same place that he's been stuck in for several years now. Won't have the opportunity to start, even if he might be improving. Maybe today's game buys him a little extra time in these coming preseason games to really, truly show what he's got. But it is that quandary of time in the NFL attached to the rookie contracts and attached to the fact that teams are going to be loyal to effective veteran starters who they already have on the roster. So let's talk a little bit more about the 49ers today at practice. I discussed Ji'Ayir Brown, and then down at the bottom of this, by the way, the 49ers, they posted this the other day that Marquise Siegel, I talk about him being an elite. Well, Marquise Siegel's here. Ji'Ayir Brown said, did you guys see his backflip? He went like 10 feet in the air. I mean, I got to pause this. This is 49ers rookie Marquise Siegel out of Kansas State. He's got one of the best broad jumps and best vertical jumps of any safety in the draft class. 38 inches. What's the high point right here? I mean, that's certifiably crazy, right? This is something else. He might, I don't know if he's 10 feet off the ground, but he might be 8. I mean, he's what, 6 feet tall? So his head is moving up at the jump, at least a foot. Yeah, he's at least 7 feet off the ground right now. This guy's 7 feet off the ground. This is the 49ers' very, very gifted safety, Marquise Siegel. 10-foot broad jump, 38-inch vertical, 4.37 40. I mean, if Robert Saleh wants traits-based safeties, I think that Marquise Siegel fits that mold. Now, can he play cerebrally the way that Ji'Ayir Brown has been able to play cerebrally at his height in the NFL? And Ji'Ayir Brown is trying to do it now, meeting with those 49ers quarterbacks. I had a little bit more on the 49ers day of moves down here. There's Robert Saleh, by the way. Michael and Ricky Pearsall were both back at practice, so the freakouts on both of those guys were definitely premature. The 49ers, to make room for Callaway, who's a veteran receiver from the Saints. He was with the Saints in the past, 48 catches in 2021. To make room for him, to make room for Abdullah, to make room for Andy Isabella, the 49ers released Equanimeous St. Brown. They waived his fellow receiver Malik Knowles. They also waived Sebastian Gutierrez, the offensive tackle. So I think that this calls for us updating the roster. I think we could do this in real time right now. See if I could remember all of these 49ers moves and execute this in one fell swoop. All right, what do we got? First, I would say actually that Ben Barch is off of the NFI list. I'm trying to get this off of my screen. Timelines. All right. So Barch is off of the NFI list, which means that he no longer has to be shaded in this color. Then we move to, I got to get rid of this. There, I got rid of it. This is a lot better. Let's move to some of the cuts. Equanimeous St. Brown has been released. Andy Isabella now on the team. We've got Andy's name over here. The 49ers added Marquez Callaway, so we can go ahead and add Marquez Callaway's name to the mix here. What else did they do? They added running back Amir Abdullah, which we already did this morning. Good, he's on there. They added another quarterback in Carter Bradley. So I will actually move Curtis Rourke over a spot right here. And we'll put Carter Bradley as QB3 right now because I don't expect Rourke back until the regular season. Carter Bradley is Gus Bradley's son, by the way. So father and son, coach and player, both with the 49ers now. And now we have to cut this roster down to 90 people. We have to waive Sebastian Gutierrez. It's going to be right here. We have to waive Malik Knowles. It's going to be gone right here. Maybe we can even take out some of the coloring. There we go. And we have to waive Jalen Mahoney, the safety. He's been with the team for last season and this season. Was an undrafted free agent out of Vanderbilt. So Barch also activated from NFI. We are at 90 people on this roster. This is what it looks like. All wrapped up. Cool stuff, right? 49ers will, that's not it. They're going to be making more moves over the course of this camp. They've got 2 more practices here. One of the big concerns is that there's no timetable being shared on Jauan Jennings, which is a big part of the reason why the 49ers keep on adding receivers, because you need receivers to get through these practices and then potentially the preseason games. But Ayuk is already out. We know that the Demarcus Robinson suspension may come down, but Jennings has now missed 3 straight practices, and Shanahan said that he didn't have a timetable for him to come back. Now, we know that they had been negotiating a contract extension with Jennings. Again, we're not sure how serious this calf issue is, but if it's anything beyond just day-to-day minor, you would have to think that it can't help the contract negotiations going on, right? So hold your breath. This Jauan Jennings situation, if it lasts a few more days, it could get a little weird. 49ers say that it's the same calf that was bothering him in spring, which I think is relevant information as well. All right, any more questions? Let's get some good ones in. Jay asks, and thank you to Jay, do I feel that the 49ers have a defensive player of the year on the roster? They quite literally do. They've got Nick Bosa on the roster. He won the award in 2022. I don't think he's been that much worse since 2022. I think that the support around him has been worse, so the pressures haven't turned into the sacks that they turned into before, but I think that he's still playing at a really, really high level. Now he's going to have a bookend, and then the question is, and Bryce Huff, and then the question is, how strong will the 49ers be against the run to give Nick a chance to rush the passer frequently enough to put up 15-plus sacks? Probably what you're going to need for the Defensive Player of the Year award. But early indications, Nick is getting after it with Trent Williams, and I think he's won a lot of those battles with Trent because it's Nick Bosa. Like, this is an actual pedigreed Defensive Player of the Year, and I think he deserves the corresponding respect. Oh, did you mean Defensive Rookie of the Year? Okay, well, I'm glad I answered one question. Now we can answer a second question, and it's a second super. Keep on. Hey, this is great, man. Keep on saying the wrong thing or putting a typo in and then sending $10 every time. I really appreciate you. I'm serious. I just think it's funny because you sent another one, so I doubly appreciate you. Do they have a Defensive Rookie of the Year on the roster? If Michael Williams can resemble 60 to 70% of Alden Smith with the long arms and that pass rushing ability, then yes, I think that would be your guy. CJ West, defensive tackle, Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's been violent so far, but there's so much to do to get to that level. And there's a lot of defensive tackles that are built similarly to CJ West. I don't think there are a lot of versatile defensive linemen built similarly to Michael Williams, though. I think he brings truly, truly intriguing potential to a versatile spot. He played a ton of positions at Georgia, but with the length of the arms, the lightness on his feet, the length, he could play tackle or outside. I think that's all tremendously promising stuff for the 49ers. All right, you hear that? That's the doorbell ringing. Must be the Amazon guy. I've got to go. Hit the notification button. We'll talk to you soon.